We're all too often aware of the changes that we want to see in our lives, the person that we want to be. This is why New Year's resolutions are so popular, or YouTube videos promising you a life reset. We have a clear idea of who it is we want to be, but what we're not seeing or what we're missing is why we're not already achieving that. Sometimes just consciously setting the intention isn't enough. We see this when we promise ourselves we're going to quit drinking or stop eating sugar or stop arguing with our partner. The information that we're missing is why we're doing that in the first place. Often, the reason why we're doing the behavior, the pattern, the mindset is locked inside the unconscious mind. We're not doing it intentionally. And when we set conscious intention and just try to be better at that thing, all too often it doesn't stick, it doesn't last. The answer is to find out why we're doing it in the first place. And this is where RTT can be a really useful tool. We can go back into the memories that have caused this belief, this pattern, this mindset, and we can evaluate it and make changes. Once you understand why you're doing something, it becomes conscious, it becomes more of a choice. And we can also use neurolinguistic programming to reprogram what you think about those things. So for example, a few months ago, I had a client who would chronically overeat, and she was struggling with her weight for some time. She did have some success with different types of diets where she would lose weight for a few months, maybe even a year, but ultimately would eventually return to her old eating patterns. When we put her into a regression, we found out that she had a pattern from childhood to do with her mother. Her mother wasn't a particularly warm or affectionate person, not very comforting. They didn't have much of a connection between them. But when her mother was in the mood to try to connect with her daughter, she would connect with her through food, through giving her sweets or snacks or treats. And so this was the memory that came up. It was lovely. It was a warm, sweet memory of her sitting on the kitchen counter with her mother and her mother giving her some treats. We were quickly able to make the connection between feeling connected, feeling loved, and eating certain foods. As soon as the client was able to recognize the connection, it made sense to her why she was doing what she was doing. Understanding something is extremely powerful. As I said with Carl Jung, it's making the unconscious conscious, which empowers you to make a different choice. But understanding under hypnosis is even more powerful, because in hypnosis, you are more receptive or susceptible to new ideas, new ways of being. So we were able to take this memory and understand why this pattern was there, why this repeated behavior was there. And that does a few things. It shifts the shaming and the blaming cycles that we put ourselves into, and it gives us understanding and empathy towards ourselves. We were then able to take that and write her a script that helped her to see that there were many, many different areas of her life where she could find that connection, because she wasn't a little girl dependent on her mother's affection anymore. Now she is a beautiful, successful adult with many friends, with a loving husband, and with children of her own. Connection is all around her. And so she was able to break that pattern of using food to feel comfort, to feel love and connection, and to move forward into finding it in healthier ways that would give her the life that she wanted. Within a few months, she found that she wasn't using food to comfort eat or to get that dopamine high, and that when she was snacking, she was eating healthy snacks, as we had written into her script. The mind is so receptive to what we tell it. But when it's running on old programming, it's going to give us behaviors today that no longer fit. When she was a little girl, that was a relevant thought process. It was relevant in that was the information she was getting from her environment. She was dependent on her mom for love and connection at that age. She was only 5 years old in that memory. And yet she's not 5 years old anymore. And she has a whole buffet of options when it comes to finding love and connection in her current life. There is a psychologist, Kathy Overman, who recently said The brain will choose a familiar hell over an unfamiliar heaven. The reason is that the brain knows that in that familiar hell, even if it didn't give you the outcome you wanted or there was uncomfortable aspects to it, you survived. And our brain can be quite rudimentary. Its main goal is to keep us alive. And so when it experiences something that's unfamiliar, it often wants to regress back to what it knows. So how do we overcome this? This is where the repetition of the scripts come in. We are taking something that's unfamiliar and we're making it familiar. So in this example that I was sharing with you, we were getting love and connection from the relationships around her, from picking up the phone and connecting with a friend, from having a cuddle with her kids, instead of what was familiar to her at that point, which was feeling love and connection through snacking and through eating things that were unhealthy and left her feeling guilty and shamed afterwards. One of the ways that we'll do this is by creating visualizations in your script. Visualizations are extremely important because it allows the brain to experience the unfamiliar without triggering the nervous system, which means when you come into that scenario, when you're in that new situation, it doesn't feel so unfamiliar anymore, and the brain is less likely to reject it with self-sabotaging behaviors. RTT gives us a vehicle with which we can change what is familiar to you, the thought patterns that maybe you've been stuck in the past that are keeping you in repetitive behaviors that you don't want to stay stuck in, and to give your brain something new, but to make it familiar, to make it accessible, to make it feel safe, even though it's unknown. If I could wave a magic wand for you today and change one thing in your life, what would it be? Now have a think about, where do you think that pattern has come from? That thing that you're repeating. We don't want to self-sabotage ourselves. That's never our intention. But while we run on old programming, often we do. RTT is a vehicle for you to change the programming that you are running on, for you to be thinking the thoughts that are going to lead you towards the life that you want to build. If this sounds something that you're interested in or that you could benefit from, book your discovery call today.